Winter 2019 was a pretty great season for anime. You had comedic, gut-busting shows like Kaguya-sama Love is War, to the intense and action-packed Dororo. There was something for everyone during this season of anime. But the one show that caught my eye more than anything else was the one titled The Rising of the Shield Hero. Now, up until this point, I never heard of nor read any other media that pertained to this property. And to many, this show would just become another run-of-the-mill isekai that wouldn't have any development, and the only discussion that would come of it would be who is the next best girl. And I'll admit, the show does suffer from some of these stereotypical isekai tropes. The main character is a loner who we're supposed to relate to, transported to a medieval fantasy world with half-human, half-animal beings, the list goes on. But as much as I can shit on the show for following the formula that has been replicated so many times before, it is unique in a lot of different ways as well. For one, the characters are older and more mature. Naofumi and the other heroes are represented to be in their early to mid-20s, something that's a lot different from what we normally see in this type of genre, where the protagonists are barely considered a teenager. Although some might find this a meaningless detail, I believe it adds to the level of maturity that this show tries to hit on in the early episodes. And I also think that's something that Neko Yuzagi intentionally wanted to give his property that wasn't normally seen in the isekai genre. And for the most part, I really enjoyed the early episodes of The Rising of the Shield Hero. They kept me interested and entertained, and the overarching plot had some great potential. The animation and action scenes were great to watch as well. I was thinking this could be a contender for one of the better shows of the isekai genre as a whole. The problem comes with the later half and the ending of the season. It rose to a promising entry in the Winter 2019 catalog, but for me, it fell short and left a bad impression once it had ended. So that's what I want to talk about today. What gave The Rising of the Shield Hero so much potential, and what attributed to it falling flat during its 25-long episode run. Now, if you haven't seen the series yet, I would recommend it, but just so you know, by episode 13, it does start its downfall. It recovers a little bit towards the end, but it really never kept that same spark it had when it first aired. It's got an English dub and sub available for free on Crunchyroll and Funimation, if you do choose to check it out. I'm not sponsored by them, but that's just where I watched it. Again, as I stated before, it started off strong with its debut 45-minute episode and the preceding few 20-minute episodes. The story of Naofumi and how he gets betrayed by literally everyone in the kingdom is kind of heartbreaking. Here you just have this random guy that was ripped away from his home, being forced to fight against monsters, only to have his so-called party member accuse him of sexually assaulting her, so he's shunned upon by the entire kingdom. Pretty messed up if you ask me. He's just trying his best and never did anything to anyone, and they're still kicking him while he's down just because he's the hero of the popularly considered worst class. It's a pretty shitty situation for him, and it continues throughout most of the show. This is the one edge I believe that Shield Hero has on most other isekai shows. The main protagonist, from the beginning, is hated by everyone. This is something that almost is never seen in other isekai shows. They do a great job at showing Naofumi trying to overcome his struggles and clear his name. One of the other aspects of the show that I loved was Naofumi's personality. He isn't a black and white character. He's got a lot of pent-up anger and emotions. But the one thing that makes him unique as a protagonist is his selfishness. That's right, Naofumi isn't a goody two-shoes like Kirito. He doesn't trust anyone besides the people in his party. If someone is asking something and it isn't Philo, Melty, or Raftalia, he'll probably ignore you. Even if you're sick, in poverty, or just looking for a meal, Naofumi won't help you. Because why should he? Everyone else betrayed him, so he doesn't owe anyone anything. Compared to other isekai heroes like Subaru, Kirito, and Kazuma, Naofumi is probably the biggest dick out of all of them. He will literally refuse to help people who are dying, starving, or injured if there isn't something in it for him. This is something that separates Naofumi and the show from every other popular isekai anime. Naofumi isn't some great grand hero like Subaru or Kirito. He's an asshole like Kazuma, but like 100 times worse. Kazuma at least has some empathy for strangers. Naofumi won't even give you the time of day. On one hand, you think the main protagonist, known as the Shield Hero, would help people out with something like that. But on the other hand, can you really blame him? Ever since he entered into the world, everyone has been out to get him. He legit can't trust anyone besides a small party, or else he's at risk for being betrayed again. And the main reason for this is because at his core, Naofumi is paranoid. It's the one fundamental structure throughout the entire series, who he can and cannot trust. Because ever since Malti offered to join his party, everyone he's encountered has betrayed or ridiculed him in some way. There are a few exceptions to this, such as the Slave Master or Erdhard, but to Naofumi, if you aren't with him, you're against him, which is something we see him have a hard time struggling with throughout the series. Now, I know I talked a lot about how cool Naofumi was as an MC at the beginning of the series because he was so different, but in truth, it did get kinda old pretty quick. Never did we really see him warm up to people that treated him with respect. He always considered everyone not in his party as an enemy. And I guess you can't really blame the guy. He was accused of sexual assault when it never happened and couldn't even get a chance to defend himself. But eventually, the whole plot of the series just didn't seem like it had a clear direction or clear focus. The party was basically just wandering around the entire kingdom to the middle and towards the end of the whole series with no goal in mind. This is, in my opinion, when the series took a steep dive in quality. After episode 12, there was no real advancement in plot or the story until around episode 20, when Naofumi and his party finally defeat the Pope and meet up with the Queen. Toward the end of the season, it did pick up a little bit in terms of quality, but besides a few highlights here and there, the show really never recovered and left a sour taste in my mouth once it finished. I don't think that The Rising of the Shield Hero is a bad show. I was more disappointed than anything that it didn't live up to its potential seen throughout the web novel, light novel, and manga. In comparison, the anime is like a children's book in terms of its writing and story. The web novel describes events in such gruesome detail with a much darker tone. The anime left out some really vital and important scenes that added to the character development of a lot of the characters. One such example is with Raphtalia. She's arguably the character that changes the most throughout the series. We see her initially as a poor, scared little girl, basically afraid of her own shadow. From that point at which Naofumi buys her from the slave trader, to the end of the season, she's changed drastically with the plot development. The problem rises with the events told to help move her character arc. The best example I can give is when she finally confronts Idol Rabier, the person who tortured her and her friends and sold her into slavery. Here's what happens in the manga. We see Idol holding Melty captive while Naofumi and Raphtalia are there to get her back. Raphtalia advances and stabs Idol after being hit with an airstrike shield. She stabs him and Idol begs for Raphtalia to spare his life. She stands over him with a menacing look, commenting on how boring he really is. She gets angry that he doesn't remember the names of her friends he's killed. She eventually takes out a second sword and stabs him again. He's pushed through a window and he falls to his death. Now, I would show you the actual scene from the anime just to give full context, but I won't be able to due to YouTube auto copyright. So you'll just have to take my word for it that I am telling the truth. But here is what happens in the anime, and I'll add some screenshots from the actual anime just to give a little bit more context. But in the anime, Raphtalia has a talk with Idol about how badly he treated her and her friends after she rescues Melty. She then spares his life, but Idol takes the opportunity to try and attack her, which ends up her having to push him out through the window, supposedly having him fall to his death. We later learn that he didn't actually die, but rather survived and resurrected a dinosaur to try and kill Naofumi and his party, but the dinosaur ends up stepping on him, thus actually killing him. A pretty different story than that of the manga. Although we do see Raphtalia grow throughout this encounter, I believe the manga does a much better job of her growing as a character compared to her anime counterpart. In one, Raphtalia willingly takes a life, something she's wanted to do for years. In the other, she chooses to let him live only for him to die to his own fault. This wasn't the first instance where the anime deviates from its source material, and it definitely wasn't the last. Just to show how dark and gritty the original web novel was, I'll read a passage from it. Queen. Iwatani-sama, what kind of punishment do you want to give these two? You have the right to choose. Naofumi. Death. Capital punishment. I answered almost on reflex. I must hate them unconsciously as well. Honestly, other than the killing, no other choice exists for me. This grudge of mine can't even be solved with death. Trash. Gunu, you bastard. Bitch, stop joking around. The queen raises her hand and silences the two. Queen. Really? You'll be satisfied with just killing? The queen suspiciously wraps her magic around me. A chill runs up my spine. Annoying. I instinctively realize who I'm dealing with. Queen. Assuming you kill them, they would be released from whatever torment or fun you would have with them, for just a moment of satisfaction. Now Fumi, you... No. Keep talking. Queen. Killing them is half-hearted. If a dog is useful, you stroke it affectionately, keeping them tamed till death. To act so cold, despite them being relatives. Queen. Please think of this as my feelings for them. Now Fumi. Yeah. So that's how it is. Basically, besides murder and forgiving, I will grant you anything else. Queen. Originally, the authority of the country is with the queen, but following the scandal of the Three Heroes Church, the royal family's position is being questioned by foreign countries. Now Fumi. Crucifying two incompetents would persuade the foreign countries, wouldn't it? Trash. Shield, you bastard. The queen ignores Trash's howling. Queen. Normally, that would be the case, but that does not apply with Altcry. Now Fumi, why not? Queen. He's a fool now, but he was amazed back in the day. Since his name is well known outside the country, selling this by killing him is impossible. Now, I'm not saying that the anime needs to be a perfect adaptation of its source material. I understand that's an unrealistic expectation. Nor am I advocating that the anime needs to be as dark, mature, or gruesome as its source material, although I would prefer it. But what I am saying is that if the anime adaptation wants to be successful, at least in my eyes, it needs to understand the core values that it wants to get along with the project. The boring filler episodes and plot can just be that, boring and filler, as long as the core values and defining moments from the source material is portrayed successfully. Again, I'm not saying it needs to be a one-to-one, completely transparent animation of a manga panel, but when you have something as defining as Raftalia killing her previous torturer and slave master, to it being animated as her sparing his life and him instead dying by being stomped on by a dinosaur, we've clearly missed a step and are not on the same page as what is vital to the story. Now listen, I don't fully hate the rising of the Shield Hero. I thought it was an enjoyable anime that had a pretty easy plot to follow along with some cool action scenes and showed a nice relationship between characters. However, that doesn't excuse the fact that I believe it can be better than what we saw from Season 1. There will undoubtedly be a next season eventually. It was rated as one of the best shows of the Winter 2019 season, so I'm sure that they're made plenty of money to give fans some more of what they want. I do hope that Kinama Citrus learns from some of the mistakes shown present throughout the first season. Shield Hero has some great potential to be a great anime, but it's up to the studio to see if it will rise to the task. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. If you want me to do any more reviews on other anime, leave a comment telling me which one. I hope to try and post more frequently throughout the rest of the year. And if you want to follow me on any of my other socials, they'll be linked in the description as well. But until then, I will see you all next time.